one of the things that both of us have been focused on a lot lately, it's not just the social impact that we want to have, but we've also been focused so much on the how and the who. And tell us a little bit about that, and I know your work with the Racial Equity Asset Lab has been so fundamental.
That's what brought us together, honestly. It wasn't the thematic focus, it was who has the opportunity to manage capital, who is an allocator, who's at the table, and how is that point of view actually informing what happens next, where money goes, who gets supported, all those things. I came to RIA having worked at those intersections when I was developing a whole initiative at a previous organization that was really focused on the manager diversity and endowment management. So the ways in which foundations who had values or commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion, how does that show up in the endowment process? And that can be who is managing the money, or it can be how those resources are being utilized, right? Like, what's the strategy? And I focused on the who, because that has such a ripple effect, right? Like, there's such a multiplier effect when you think about changing who is at the table. And over time, like, the women's health space is a perfect example of overlooked markets because of who is managing the money. So if, quite frankly, the white guys who are the 98% of, running assets of the U.S. Asset management industry saw everything through their own lens, we would have so much more investment in women's health, but we don't, because their perspective is not one of, the issues, the considerations, the concerns of our health, but we're half the population, right? So it matters who's there, because the women's health funds that have been started over the last few years have all been started by women, right? So we're the ones that are creating not just the solutions, but creating the pathways to those solutions being funded for our own health. What is it? Less than 2% of the healthcare venture funding was going into women's health. Outside of oncology, the NIH funding, less than 3% was going into women's health. So again, still half the population, still birthing 100% of it, but who had control of resources determined what was getting funded. So now we've got this tremendous excitement, rightfully so, about the opportunities to invest in this emerging space of
I hate that word.
Health.
I hate that word. Women's health has been around for a long time.
It's been around forever, and it's not a niche market, right? Like we've heard that. So it absolutely matters. And in bringing these funds into the market, recognizing that there are standard ways of, diligencing fund managers that would have actually eliminated the opportunity to discover this new market as well. So, track record and AUM and management fees, all these things that have been designed around a particular profile of fund manager and asset owner.
White men.
White men.
Call it what it is. Yeah.
It had to shift.
We all know that it's such a catch-22 that you can't manage a fund unless you've managed a fund. And there are so many barriers to entry, and not only the traditional things that the market is so saturated with white men in these roles, and they tend to interview and recruit from the people that they went to school with or that they worked with, and those are behaviors that have been ingrained in our society for centuries. So we need access to new places to recruit from. We need to have different standards, and I know that you're doing that work with Due Diligence 2.0. And we need to have other ways. We need the asset owners, people who have capital, like foundations, family offices, university endowments, if they are committed to diversity in their social missions. They also need to recognize how diversity in their investment strategy is not only going to bring them better returns, and that evidence is so clear, not just with gender diversity, but racial diversity. And it's going to give them a healthier endowment, but it's also going to influence and accelerate their social impact goals, because it's going to create excellent jobs, and it's going to create the pipeline of new managers, both women and people of color, to grow the industry and diversify the industry.
Yeah.